Schwartz, and I'm from the Working Families Party, Westchester Putnam Working Families Party. I appreciate the opportunity to be here tonight. And I won't rehearse all the things that we've heard tonight already, and you hear other speakers talk about it. We're aware of the enormous challenge in closing the gap between revenues and expenditures in the budget for 2009-2010, and we recognize that the crisis isn't going to be resolved without some sacrifices. We're deeply disturbed, as all of you in this room I know are, by the fact that so far the governor is proposing to solve the crisis by cutting services to the people who need them most. If the governor had his way, he'd take his axe to school aid, health care, child care, you've heard of programs for the elderly, homeless prevention, other social services. You're going to hear more about them than I'm going to, so I'll stop with that. But just let me say that the governor's proposal would result in cuts of $15,000 per classroom in 64% of the districts in the state and 20,000 layoffs. The Henry Hudson School District up above here is already talking about slashing 40 jobs. And people who go to SUNY and CUNY trying to get an education, a higher education at a state university are facing tuition increases of $620. And if that's not bad enough, that was imposed this present semester, and then the state took a hunk of it to solve the budget crisis, didn't even give us directly back to the colleges. So the federal stimulus package may help reduce some of this deficit, but we're at a point in our history where education and other services cannot be cut any further, and there has to be another solution. So what does the governor propose? He calls for dozens of what we call regressive tax increases. Taxes on soda, taxes on car registration, taxes on health insurance, taxes on clothes, even going to the movies or downloading music. These are taxes which impact working people and hardly impact the wealthy. So the Working Families Party, as I said, recognizes that everybody's going to have to sacrifice. But it's our position that the sacrifice has to be shared. It cannot come at the expense of low and moderate income families alone. And the fortunate few at the top, those who can most afford to sacrifice, should not be exempted. That's the notion of fair share tax reform. As Mark told you, over the last 30 years, New York has reduced income taxes on the wealthiest New Yorkers by more than a half and eliminated high-income tax brackets so that working-class families and the very rich pay exactly the same tax rate. The changes have resulted in a loss of $8 billion a year in state revenue. Think what that could do. And they've led, by the way, to the state forcing more and more costs on local communities and thus pushed up property taxes, which for many New Yorkers are the worst taxes of them all. Right now, the top tax rate is 6.85%, and it begins at $40,000 income. So as someone has said, the doorman who works at Trump Towers and Donald Trump are paying the same tax rate. They're paying the same tax rate. Is that fair? Is that sharing the solutions to our budget crisis? So we're calling on the legislature to create new tax brackets for income over $250,000. And let me stop now and tell you, that's adjusted income. These people say, oh, that's going to hurt a lot of people. To have an adjusted income of $250,000, you're probably really earning someplace between $305,000 and $315,000. And the entire proposal would raise, by our estimate, about $6 billion in revenue, almost half the deficit that the governor is suggesting, and would only impact 312,000 taxpayers statewide. That's 3.4% of all taxpayers are being asked to pay a little bit more so that we don't have to cut SSI, we don't have to cut health care, we don't have to cut education, and on and on and on. The opponents of fair share tax reform are going to tell you that raising taxes on the wealthiest will cause them to move out of the state and further weaken the economy. There is no evidence, if they tell you that. There is no evidence. In September 2008, Princeton University Policy Research Institute released a study that showed that since New Jersey raised the tax rate on half-millionaires in 2004, the number of people with incomes at that level has grown 70%, and an extra $1 billion of revenue has been raised. And here in New York, where we did have an incremental tax increase to meet a crisis back in 2003, the Fiscal Policy Institute has examined what happened. During the time the surcharge was in effect, the number of high-income returns grew by over 20%. The number of high-income people filing returns grew by over 20%. New York State created 127,200 new jobs during that time. People don't move for taxes. They move for affordable housing. They move for employment. They move for access to health care, education, and public safety. Jobs. They move. The very services that have been selected for cuts. And 15 states already have higher income tax rates than New York, and each one has experienced positive private sector job growth with an average of 6.5%. So, the Working Families Party and others in coalition with us in the Fair Share Tax Reform Coalition are urging elected officials to put aside the myths and do the fair thing. And I look, Senator Oppenheimer, at you because we need your support. Nobody likes to pay taxes, but it's time for our leaders to step up to their responsibilities. Reform the personal income tax now. Don't solve the budget crisis of the tax of low and moderate income families, but demand that the wealthiest New Yorkers share in the solution.